So first of all, I'll click on the start button and then I will choose SQL Server Management Studio. I will just have to choose SQL Server Management Studio. So this one, I would need this file, SQL Server Management Studio. If you want this to be available on the taskbar, you can pin it. You can just pin it. Actually, I have already pinned onto my taskbar, so this is on pin option. So you can just pin it to the taskbar so that you do not have to go to the start button. I have pinned it out here. I will pin Gracie as well. So now let me go and start with the SQL Server Management Studio. I just click on the SQL Server Management Studio, and now there are a couple of things that you will see here. Okay, once you see the SQL Server Management Studio, you will get a dialog box. The dialog box will have something called server type. So server type by default is for us is always a database engine. You do not have to do anything. You do not have to change it to anything else for the server type, because since you are working with a database, so this is a database engine. Now the next thing that is a server name. So server name means the name of the computer where your database is stored. So for the database, server name could be anything. For example, in my case, this could be desktop 5UP Q1 भन्ने पनि हुन्छ. वास्तवमा यो भनेको चाहिँ के भन्दाखेरि यो चाहिँ यो कम्प्युटरकै नाम हो. Or this computer name also could be written by using something called bracket. त्यसपछि LOCAL local. You could do anything. So local लेखि नि भयो, त्यो कम्प्युटरको नाम चुज गर्ने भयो. Or you can even pass the IP address of the computer where the database is stored. Okay. So either you can pass the IP address of the computer wherever you want to locate the database, or you can choose the computer name from the browse option. Or what you can do, you can simply write local bracket with a local to make sure that this is your server name of this is your local computer. Then you have authentication. So you have two modes of authentication. You have Windows authentication and you have SQL Server authentication. So Windows authentication is the authentication which is applied for logging on to this computer. So whatever the authentication that you have applied to log into this computer, so that authentication will be applied to log into your database. SQL Server authentication भनेको चाहिँ this is the password which is required during the installation of the SQL Server. You can even create a user who will have an access to the SQL Server. र त्यो युजरले चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि if you want to allow a user to access some database, then I'm restrict गर्न सक्छौं. जस्तो कि we could be having more than one database. We could be having 10,000, let's say hundreds of database. र out of the hundreds of database, जस्तो कि मलाई एक राम भन्ने मान्छेलाई database A, B, C को मात्र access दिनु छ भने I can give him the username and a password and he can connect to my database by using SQL Server authentication. Okay. But we do not want to go for SQL Server authentication right now. We want to make it simple. So we'll be getting on with the Windows authentication. And once I have chosen my database engine, once I have created the server name, once I have chosen my authentication, then I will click on the connect button. So I will click on the connect button here, everyone. So once I click on the connect button, now on the left hand side you will see a database engine. So this is called a database engine part. And under the database engine part, you can see a lot of things here. Just again, you will see a name of the computer on which the database is located, and there is an option of database. There is an option to security, server, object, application management, server agent. So we are not interested for everything. Your security, we do not want to talk about the security right now. But later on, once you go for a detailed database management system, database management system, you also need to configure the security later on. तर अहिले चाहिँ हामी यसलाई केही गर्नु पर्दैन. We do not have to do anything to related to the security. So we are only mainly interested in this database part. So in this database, if you expand, you can see there are lots of database that I have already created. So धेरै databaseहरु छन्. त्यसमा चाहिँ केही databaseहरु सिस्टमकै databaseहरु छन् र केही databaseहरु चाहिँ I have created it on my own. मैले आफ्नो यो कामको लागि मैले केही क्रिएट गरेको छु भने केही चाहिँ सिस्टमको databaseहरु छन्. Okay. So in order to create a new database, what I can do is I can right click on my database and I can create a new database. Okay, so what I can do is I can right click on the database and I can click on the new database. So once I do that, I'll be redirected to the page where I have to create a new database. So are you clear with this, everyone? So if you're not clear, please write no. If you are clear, write yes. If you are not clear, please write no. If you are clear, write yes. So Lakshmi yes, Visant yes, Vidhan yes, Sagun yes. So you are clear with this stuff. So thank you so much for the confirmation, everyone. And let us proceed now by creating a database. And this time we are going to create a very brand new, your first database. Very brand new first database. So we can create a database by right clicking on the database and clicking onto the new database. And once I click onto the new database, you will see I have something called database name. I have something called database name, and there is something called owner. Actually, I'm not interested with owner right now. I am interested only by providing the database name, and there are some other options onto the left hand side. There is some options called general options, file groups. यो मध्ये मलाई केही पनि चाहिएन अहिले. I do not have to do anything to any of these options. I do not have to do any options other than the database name. So only the thing that I am interested on is a database name. Okay, so I'm only interested on working on with the database name, and I'm going to provide one brand new database. Okay, so I'm going to create one database called, let's say, any database. So I'm going to create some database called student. So you could put any name, anything that suits your need, and I'm going to create a database, student database. Okay, so I just created a database, student database, and once I just write my name, student database. अर्को कुरा हामीले ख्याल गर्नुपर्ने कुरा चाहिँ के छ भन्दाखेरि so database name is a student database. So one thing that you have to take care of is that you should not be having a student and space in database. Okay, so there should not be a space between the student and the database. So there should be no space, otherwise you'll be landing up with the error right on. अहिले चाहिँ भन्छ तर पछि दुःख दिन्छ हामीहरूले. So it's better idea to have no space when creating the database name. So whatever the rules that are applied for creating a variable, the same rules also apply for creating the database. Okay, so no space, no what you call, whatever the rules for creating variable, just to get special symbol हुँदैन, सुरुमा later हुँदैन. So the same rules also apply for creating the database that you want. And once I do that, I'll just create and click OK option. Once I create on this OK option, so you can just see and then you can just see that but once we expand this database, you can see I just whatever the database I created should be listed out here. So you can see at the bottom my student database is out here. Okay, so the student database is created out here. So well done. So our first database, the very first database of your session is created, and the very first database name is the student database. All right, everyone. So any doubt here up to now, anyone? So please confirm me. Please confirm if you have a doubt up to here. If you have a doubt in creating a database, if you have a doubt, please write yes. If you have a doubt, write no. Okay, no doubt. So we created a database. Anybody else? Okay, no. Okay, very good now. So once we created a database, the next thing that we will do is to create a table. The next thing that we will do is to create a table, and this time for creating a table, what we will do is we'll simply use a GUI mode of this student database. So what I can do is I simply expand this. I'm going to expand it up. And you can see there is an option of table. So do you see option of table, everyone? we have a table. Well, I'll expand Garibani. You won't see anything other than the system tables. So I'm not interested in system tables, but I'm interested in creating my own table. Let's say I want to create a student table with some piece of informations. Let's say I want to create a student table 1, new table. Okay, and once you create a student table, you will see the option with the column name. You will see the option with the column name and a data type and allow nulls. Allow nulls means whether you want to make it null. Data type means whether your it's integer, float, double, char, image, bool, whatever. What is the data type of this column? Will be we can define it out here. So let's say I just want to make a student ID first, and make sure that you do not you define the same rule that you use for declaring a variable. So the rules for declaring, hello. So, any problem, anyone? Okay. So, do you have any question, anyone? If you have a question, please raise your question by writing in the chat box. Okay. So, let us say that we have a column name whose field is a student ID, and we need a data type. So, basically, student ID, I just want it to have type integer, so I'm making it integer, and then I will be having some student name and make it varchar of, let's say, 100. And I do not want this. Okay, let me make it allow it now, and then I could be having address, and again this is a varchar. Now you might be wondering what is this varchar. I'll explain in a bit. On type also I want it to be a varchar. Now let us try to understand what is this varchar. Var means variable, character means this is a character. So this will the varchar means it's alphanumeric value. So student name could be Ram at the rate 123 or something like that. So you varchar will be taking alphanumeric value. Okay, so varchar can take alphanumeric value. So sometimes I might have to work with the alphanumeric value. That's why I'm taking a varchar. Okay, so it's very handy. It's very handy once I define a varchar. And if you want to really want to control all those alphabets, so either you can control it by using SQLs, by using a stored procedure, or you can control it by writing a C# code from the front end. Okay, so these are the things that I want for today. I just created a table, a student with I have not given it a name. I have created a table with the fields like student ID, which is of type integer, and then I have created a table of whose name is student name, and then address, and then contact, and then email. Okay, so I have 5 fields, 1 2 3 4 5 fields out here, and now what I can do is I can save this table. I can save this table, and I can name this table to, let's say, student table 1. I'm making it student table 1 because I need to work with some more table with the same. Okay, so let me click OK, and once I do that, you might not see it right now here, so you might see student table is created, right? So finally we also created a student table 1. So please let me know if you have any questions out here up to now. Please let me know if you have any questions still here. Yes, Lapshan, varchar means both letter and number. So any question, anyone, please raise your questions out here in the chat box. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you want to ask me, if there's anything that you don't understand, please let me know by writing in the chat box. Yes, the video will be uploaded, don't worry. I'm recording my session. No questions, Sagun? No question, Lapsan? So I believe that you have no question till right now. Now there will be a question. Now let me start doing it now. Now let me start populating some value onto my table. For example, I created a table, but this table has no value right now. It is completely blank, and this is I just created a table. Now, what I want to do is I want to create some value. I want to add some student in my student table one. So let me right click on this, and there is an option. You can see various options out here. You can see new table design, select up 1,000 rows, edit top 100 rows, script table age, dependencies, full text index. So I am not interested with all of this. I'm only interested on two things. One is select top 1,000 rows, edit top 200 rows, and later on I'm also teaching you how to script table. For now, I'm interested in edit top 200 rows. So if I do that, now it will provide you a let's say form through which you can fill up the student ID, name, address, contact, and email. Now let us say the student ID is 1 and student name is Ram. Address is Kathmandu. Contact is something something something. Email is ram@gmail.com. Alright, so one field is set up. Again, let us say we have another ID with 2 and the student name is Gopal. Address is Bharatpur. Contact is 888888888. Okay. And let's say email is gopal@gmail.com. Again, let's say I have one more field. Let's say 3. And let's say I have Harish. And then its address is let's say Bhadrapur. Contact is something. And let's say it's harish@outlook.com. Now the problem begins here, everyone. How many fields I have? 3 fields. I have 3 fields with the ID very unique. I have unique ID of 1, unique ID of 2, unique ID of 3. But I have not defined this as a primary key. So now I can still create another user whose ID is 2. And I can still make it, mm, let's say trace. Let's say Bhaktapur. Some contact number. And suresh@gmail.com. Now there is a problem out here, everyone. I can even create with ID 1, Manish, let's say Lalitpur, and let's say Manish@hotmail.com. Now, do you think this my table is good? What do you think? Is my table good? Is this my table containing a very good data? If you just have to analyze my table, do you think is my table containing a good data? Any idea, anyone? So do you think my table is containing a good data? Abhishek Podel, no. Abhishek, can you tell me why it is not containing a good data? Why do you think my table is not containing a good data? So Lapsan is saying if there is no primary key, then it's good. Okay. So you are very near, Lapsan. If there is no primary key, then it's good, I think. Okay, so that's where somewhere you are near to that. Okay, so you are trying at least. Everyone, anybody wants to have some suggestions on this, whether my data is good or not? Vishal, are you there? So I think you have been working around with the project, so you must be knowing this, whether my data is good or not. So data is good. We cannot sort data on the basis of ID. Absolutely, Susant. We cannot sort data on the basis of ID. Absolutely correct. See the problem with here. There is nothing that I can define them uniquely. Okay. So if I tell the student so this is some like a roll number. ID is just like a roll number. So can there be a student? Can there be 2 students with the same roll number? Can there be a student with the same roll number? Obviously no. There cannot be a student with the same roll number. So here ID with the 1 this id plays a role of a this plays a role of a roll number, and you can see there are two students who is having a roll number 1, id 1, and there are two students who is having a roll number 2. So if I call roll number 1, so I don't know who will be called, whether Ram or Manish. Confusion is there, right? So some type of data is known as, let's say, this is inconsistent data. This data is not consistent actually. And in order to maintain its consistency, in order to, actually the data is duplicate also, because there are two students with the same ID. So this data is neither consistent and this data is duplicate as well. So we need to, whenever we create a database, we have to be very careful on this. We should not allow the user to create a duplicate data. For example, if Ram does a fraud and if Manish gets caught, then obviously Manish will get punished for the thing that Ram has done, isn't it? So this may lead to a very serious situation later on. Or let's say there cannot be a people with the same citizenship number in Nepal. So citizenship number is very unique for everyone, isn't it? So this cannot be, let's say, citizenship. If people have a citizenship number, that cannot be known, and that has to be a unique value. So let us try to avoid this issue in our next table. Okay, so let's try to and sort this out. So for that, I'm going to create another table. So I'm going to create right click, new table, and I'm going to make it again a student ID, and again integer, student name, address, email. Okay, these are the fields that I want for you. Let me save this table. Let me save this student table too. Ah, there is a problem here. So in this case, what I will do is I will just make this. I'll just make this a student ID a primary key. So how do I make it a primary key? So I can right click on here and I can just set primary key. So what is the meaning of primary key? So primary key means the student ID should not be a blank value. The student ID must not be a blank value, and the student ID must be a unique value. So this is defined here. So now I cannot input a duplicate value. I cannot supply a duplicate value to the ID. So my one of the problem is solved. So let me set this table and let me name it student table 2. So do you understand what am I trying to tell you? So do you understand why did I create a primary key? If you didn't understand, please let me know. If you didn't understand why did I create a primary key, please let me know. Write no if you didn't understand. If you understood, please write why. I want a confirmation from you guys. If you do not understand, please write no. If you understand, please write why. If there's anybody who has not understood, I'm going to repeat the concept, but you have to understand. Only Sushant has a response back with why. Option yes, Vishal yes, excellent. Now see the real use of this primary key, a magic. So let us say I will create a student ID with 1, student name again Ram, Kathmandu, email ram@gmail.com, student ID with 2, Sham, Okra, Sham@outlook.com. But at the same time now, if I try to create another 2, Gopal, do you think is it acceptable now? Now this won't be accepted. See, I got an error. No rows was updated. The data in row 3 was not committed. Error showed .NET SQL find data provider. Error message violation of primary key constraint. PK student table cannot insert a duplicate key in object dbo.student table 2. The statement has been terminated. Okay, and the suggestion is correct the errors and try press ESC to cancel this changes. So I'm going to press ESC. So This is not going to allow me to input a duplicate value, so I have to change it. All right, everyone. So are you clear now? Why did I create a primary key? So I hope you got it now. So if I create a primary key, the system itself will not allow me to create a duplicate value. So did you get my point, everyone? If you get right yes, if you know, then write no. Yes. Abhishek, yes. Sushant, yes. Vidhan, yes. Vishal, yes. Okay, great. Still we have a problem here, everyone. Still we have a problem. Problem is with this we have to provide manually. Every time we have to provide manually. This time we have to provide manually. Every time. And you know what? This value, if there are 100 students, or let's say there are even 10,000 students, so is it possible to provide the ID to all those 10,000 students? So it's very difficult to provide the ID to the 10,000 students, and you might forget the ID as well. So we need to avoid this issue. We need to avoid this issue. So in order to avoid this issue, what we can do is now again, we can use something called identity. So identity means the value will get automatically incremented every time you create a new user. Okay, so every time you create a new user, the value should get automatically incremented instead of providing a manual data. Instead of providing the manual value, the value should get automatically incremented, everyone. Okay, so we have an option through which you can automatically increment the value. We have an option through which you can automatically increment the value of identity, which is by default should be declared as an integer type. So let me show you again, and let me create another table called student table 3. New table, and let us say that we have a student ID out here, and let's say this is again integer, and let's say student name varchar of 100, address varchar of 100, email, and let's say varchar of 100. So let me leave it as this for now, and again I have to set it as the primary key. This is a mandatory thing that you need to do. And now I want this field to be automatically incremented, everyone. So I just can do by just right clicking on this, and there is some properties option somewhere. Actually I don't get it here, but if you look into below, if you look below, you will see the range of options. You will see the range of options out here, and out of the various range of options, the thing that I'm interested in is identity specifications. So I'm interested in only for the identity specification, and there is an option under identity specification. There is an option called each identity. So let me just select this identity. Let me select this identity, and instead of making this no, let me choose S. Now if I make it change the value from S no to S, you will see the option like identity increment is now 1. Identity seed is now 1. Now you might be wondering what is identity increment and identity seed. Alright, so let me explain you what is this identity increment and identity seed. But before I explain you identity increment and identity seed, let me explain you what is identity. So identity means the value that I provided should be automatically incremented, so there should be no influence from the end user. Okay, so identity means there should be no influence from the other user, so this should take its identity itself. So this should create its own identity. So this is the meaning of identity specifications. Now I just made it is identity, so this means is it going to create its own identity itself? So I'm making it yes. Then this is asking, okay, so what should be the value through which the value should be incremented? So I just told it, if you create a new user, every user should be incremented by the value of 1. Okay, if the user has to be incremented by the value of 1, so what should be the initial value? So I told the initial value should be 1. So here, what you can do is, what you can understand is, identity seed 1 means the value should be incremented by 1, and identity increment means the value should be increased by 1 every time you create a new user. Okay, so we have a couple of things out here. Identity seed means the starting value, and identity increment means by how much the value should be incremented. For example, if I create a new user, the value will be 1. But what if I make it 2? The new value will be 1 plus 2, 3, then 5, then 6, then 7. But if I make it 1, the new value will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and whatever. Okay, so this is the meaning of identity increment and identity seed. Please let me know if you have any questions here, everyone. Please let me know if you have a question on identity seed, identity increment, any identity specification. Please let me know any question. So, do you have any question, anyone? If you have a question, okay, Abhishek, very clear, very good. Vishal Kharel, no question. Anybody, do you have a question? Nobody has a question, so I assume you have understood. Now let's see the beauty of this SQL. Let's see a very beauty of this SQL now. So now, let me save this table and let me make it a student table too. I saved it. And again, I will repeat the process. Edit top 1000 rows. You see this value is disabled now. I cannot supply a value. Now this means identity specification. Nobody is going to provide me the identity. I am going to provide my identity myself. So that's why I cannot provide any value out here. So this will be automatically taken by the system. And the first value should be 1 and the next value should be incremented by 1. So let us say student name called Ram, address Kathmandu, email ram@gmail.com, and you see the value automatically incremented by 1 itself. I do not have to do anything out here. Sam, Shan, Pokhara, san@gmail.com. Let's say Harish, Football, harish@gmail.com. And you say now I don't think that I should be explaining you more. If you have 100 record, you have even 1 lakh record, even if you have 1 crore record, whatever be the number of record, now I do not have to worry about this ID. Now in the case that I would have to retrieve some information, or if I have to sort it out on the basis of the ID, I have all the unique IDs along with me, isn't it? I have a unique ID with me. So I do not have to worry about sorting by the help of the ID, because all those IDs are unique and they are automatically incremented every time I create a new user. So are you clear on this, everyone? So if you're clear, then please let me yes. If no, then write no. Okay. So this is clear to many of you. So Susant clear, Lavsin clear. Rest of you, please confirm me if you are not getting the stuff. Okay, understood. So now, now let us try to understand something more now out here. So we understood something called writing to a GUI. I just used a GUI to create a data, to create a table. Okay. At the same time, I also can create it by using a SQL. I can create it by using SQL, everyone. So now, if you have clearly understood this, then now let me go and write the SQL for this. So for that, I'll be just getting into the student database. So do you want me to continue for the SQL? If you want me to continue for the SQL, please write yes. If you do not want me to continue, please write no. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so let me continue with the SQL. So I am going to continue with the SQL. So I am going to now, in order to create a SQL, I will simply right click on my database and create a new query. This time no new database, but I am going to create a new query. And I am going to create one more separate a table. So I'm just going to, in order to create a table, you have a syntax create and table name. So table name means the name of the table that you want to create. So I'm going to create a student table. Okay, I'm going to create a student table, and I'm going to create now the table with the student ID. But this is student ID. I want it of type integer. So the syntax is very different than what you have defined in your C sharp. Okay, it's very different than what you have defined in C sharp. In C sharp, we used to have integer student ID, but we have a student space ID, student ID space integer out here. Now this becomes an integer value, but at the same time, I just want it to be a primary key. So I can just make it primary key, and at the same time, I want it to be automatically incremented. So I just cancel identity 1 comma 1. So here 1 comma 1 means 1 means the seed value and 1 means the incremental value. So the thing that I do it in a GUI, I'm just doing it by writing the SQL, and you will see 99% of the time I'll be doing this. I'll be creating my own table by using the SQL because this is very handy. This is very handy for me. I can control everything on my own. So I just created a table student ID of type integer and a primary key of type identity 1 comma 1. That means this value will get automatically incremented every time a new record is added to the table. So now let me again have a new student name where can let's say 200, and again another one student address. So let's simply put address, and where can let's say 200, and then contact where can let's say 20, and let's say email where can let's say 200. And you see, whenever I create a table by using this query, so I have a student identity is a primary key identity 1 comma 1, and by at the end it should have a comma. So comma means end of this field. Comma means end of this field. Student name, at the end you have a comma. Address, at the end you have a comma. Contact, at the end you have a comma. But in email address, at the end, since this is the last field, you do not have to write comma. Okay, since this is the last field, you do not have to write a comma. Okay, so I have created a student table with the ID of integer type primary key, which is of type identity, of which will increment the value of y if a new user is created, new student is added, and student name of varchar that will take, this will take 100 character, address of varchar 200, that means this will take 200 character, contact this of type 20, so this is going to take 20 characters, email of type 200, that means this will be going to take 200 characters. And in order to run this, in order to create a table, what I need to do is to execute this table. So I can execute here. So whatever the portion that you want to execute, you can select them. Otherwise, if you do not select them, and if you have some code written down out here, then that will get executed. But I want only this much to be executed, so let me select this much and let me click execute. And once you do that, you will see command completed successfully. That means your new table has been created, but this is not reflected out here. In order to reflect out there, what you need to do is to refresh. Let's refresh, and you see now you have a student table here. All right everyone, so you have a student table out here. Now, in order to see what columns do I have in the student table, I can simply expand it, and I can click on the column, and I can simply have this view the fields that I have. That's a student ID is a primary key integer, not null. Student name varchar 100 and not null. Sorry, null fields, address, contact, email, and these are all null. By default, these are taken as a null fields. Even if you provide no value on this will be taken. Okay. So, do you have any question on this, anyone? Do you have a question on this, anyone? Yeah, option. The first one is the incremental value and the second one is the seed value. Okay. So do you have a doubt here, anyone? Do you have a doubt here with my table? With my table here, anyone? So SQL is like we just wrote our first SQL to create a student table. If you have a doubt, please raise your issue. If you have no doubt, please just write yes, we have understood. Lafshan, you have a question? Okay, no question. Okay, so let's say uh, The execution is like you select them and you execute, but this won't be executed once because you cannot create a duplicate table. If you do it again, you will get an error. There is already an object named student table in the database. Okay, you cannot execute a table, you cannot create a table more than once. So once executed, it's done. Okay, so you cannot execute this table time and again because this will try to create a duplicate table, and which is not allowed by a database. So did you get my point? And please do not put your music name like Music Nepal so that I can identify you, whoever is asking me the question. Be relevant with the name. Okay. So now I want to insert a value inside my table. Okay, I want to insert some value inside my table. So how do I do that? So let's do that for today, and then today we'll be ending up the session, and I will see you tomorrow again with this things again. So in order to insert, what I can do, I can actually insert into student table, and there is an option called values. So this is a syntax that you have to remember, everyone. And there are a couple of syntax that I will tell you. Insert into a student table. So which table you want to insert the value in? I want to insert the value inside a student table, and I want to provide some value. So value means what value do I want to provide? So I want to provide the value. Let's say student ID. I do not have to provide a student ID because ID will be automatically implemented. This is not taken by the end user, but I have to provide this for value. Let's say student name, address, contact, and email. So in order to provide the value, if it is a string value, I have to enclose it within the inverted comma. Okay, if it is a string value, I have to enclose it within the inverted comma. If it is an integer value, no need of inverted comma, which I'll be teaching you again. So let us say I want to provide a student name as Ram again, Ramesh, let's say, and address, let's say Bharatpur. So this is a string. If it is a varchar, that means it's a string value. And even contact, let's say, even contact I have defined this as a varchar. That means this is treated as a string. So that I have to enclose it within inverted comma. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and let's say 9. And email, let's say ramesh@gmail.com. ramesh@gmail.com. So I just inserted some value. And there are some alternative ways to execute this code. There are some alternative ways through which you can map the value in certain order, which I'll be teaching you that later on. So let me execute this. So are you getting this query, everyone? Are you understanding this? Did you get my table? Did you understand what I have done here? I just wrote insert into student table values, and I provided the corresponding fields. Okay, name, address, contact, email, and I can select them. I can select them, and I can press execute. And you see there is something called one row affected. Okay, one row affected means you have been able to insert a value. You have been able to insert a value. Now you already know how to view by using this right click and sort. You can just do select of 1,000 rows. Okay, if you do that, you can see that your user has been created. Okay, so you can see like that. Or let's say I do not want to do this way. I just want to write my own query. Let's say I want to write my own query. All right, let's say I want to, let me install some more value. Let's say install Ramesh, let's make it Harish, and let's make it harish@gmail.com. Let me change the contact to, let us select this, execute this, and you see one row affected. Now in order to retrieve the value, there is a SQL again. There is a SQL again, and there is a SQL called select. And select has a various forms which I'll be explaining again in my later session. But today I'll be just teaching you select star. Star means select all the columns. Star means select all the columns. All right, everyone. So star means select all the columns. So star means selecting all the columns. Select all the columns. Select star from student table. This is going to select all the columns, all the values from the student table. If I execute this now, you will see that your all the table, all the fields have been selected out here. So you can select by writing a select query, and this is the logic behind your login. This is the logic behind the login, where you put some filter conditions out here, which we'll be discussing in our next session again. So are you clear up to here, everyone? If you have a doubt, any question, please raise your question in the chat box. If you have any question, please write your question in the chat box. Okay, sir, not null, banam no data haler is okay. Yeah, I will teach you how to create not null as well. I'll also teach you how to create a not null. Just give me some time, okay? In our latter part, we'll also create not null and a unique thing as well, okay? So I'll get back to you later on, Flupson, about how to create a not null field, okay? But today let us try to understand some basics. So do you have any question on this, anyone? If you have a question, if you feel that anything that you do not understand out here, please raise your voice, please raise the question. Please raise your question, anyone. You can just type in your, yeah, you will get a today's video on. Do you have a question, anyone? If you have a question, please raise your question. If you do not have a question, please write no. No question. If you have no question, please write no question. No question. Okay. So is it okay if I stop the today's session now? And tomorrow we'll come back with some more better concepts. We'll try to analyze relations among more table. Okay. So I'll give you one work, everyone. I'll give you one work, and you are supposed to complete that work. Okay. So I'll just give you one work on this one. So you are supposed to create a database named staff database. Okay. And under star database, create a table employee with the following fields: employee ID, name, address, contact, email, designation, and salary. Okay, you just define, you just can, okay, salary could be numeric. I'll just let you know what will be the data type. So data type could be numeric 18, 2. That means 18 digit, and 18, this will take 80 up to 18 digit up to 2 decimal number. So designation could be a varchar, email could be a varchar, contact could be a varchar, address could be a varchar, name could be a varchar, and ID should be integer, and this has to be a primary key. And once you, and at least insert at least 10 employee records and select all the employee details. Can you do this question, anyone? So can you do this question? If you can do, please raise, you can write yes. If you cannot do, please write no. Yes. So I'll be sending you this question along with the video file. I'll just provide you this in the messenger. Okay. So everybody take care now. So I'll be ending today's session, and I'll see you tomorrow again at the same time. So tomorrow also we do not have a class, but I'm going to take a class. I'll just manage the time for that. Okay. Because we had already 2 days session was broken. So I'll be taking a class, but so see you tomorrow, everyone. Till then, take care. I'm ending today's session.